All right, I have a good one for you today. I know some of you don't necessarily like to read a whole big thing, so since this is important news, I've decided to do a little live stream and upload it to various websites and my BitChute channel, of course, to get my written news, which is I have a lot more content. Just come join me on Facebook. My name is Ori E. Rob. But we have an important one to talk about today, two important stories. And this isn't going to take very long in the interest of time. Let's get cracking. So the first thing we have here is, as you can see from the title, the United Kingdom has a think tank called UKFires. And you can see here from their LinkedIn that UKFires is a government-funded think tank. It is a collaboration between the universities of Cambridge, Oxford, Nottingham, Bath, and Imperial College London. These are their partners here. I'm not really familiar with a bunch of these, but I'm not from the UK, so there you go. They received funding from the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council for engineering and physical sciences research in the UK by investing in postgraduate training. We are building the knowledge and skills needed to address the scientific and technological challenges facing the nation. Well, this think tank came out with a report. What's in the report? Well, in the report Absolute Zero, UKFires is calling for, in 2020 to 2029, all airports except for Heathrow, Glasgow, and Belfast to be closed, with transfers between them by rail. And by 2030 to 2049, they want all remaining airports to be closed. And this would continue until sometime beyond 2050, if and when electric planes could fly with synthetic fuel once there are excess non-emitting electricity supplies. There are currently, for shipping of course, there are currently no freight ships operating without emissions, so shipping must contract, so they're calling for contraction of all seaports between 2020 to 2029, and by 2030 to 2049, all shipping declines to zero. Well, let me just explain something really quick for you. Just pull this up real quick. Think tanks are public-private partnerships which dream up scenarios and scenario narratives for government agencies and then make recommendations on what government approaches should be. Of course, this is funded by the British Research Council, the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, that provides government funding for grants to undertake research and postgraduate degrees in engineering and physical sciences, mainly to universities in the United Kingdom. They're not funding these think tanks for no reason. But isn't this what the whole COVID / Great Reset scam is about? It's all about eugenics and combating climate change, which requires full authoritarian control and the complete halting of travel and ultimately depopulation. If you don't understand what this is, feel free to reach out to me. You'd have to do this through Facebook or leave a comment in the BitChute or whatever. You can get a hold of me, schmoopy509@gmail.com. Also, so feel free to send an e-transfer. Pay me for my work. But anyway, this is terrifying. It's the end of all travel, all international and domestic travel completely between seaports and shipping. How are they? What? How does that work exactly? I don't know. But they're not giving, like I said, they're not giving these think tanks money for no reason. They're providing funding, and just like with the Rockefeller Foundation's scenario narrative Lockstep, which I'm sure you've heard of by now, or Event 201, which was another scenario narrative conjured up by a whole bunch of different partners like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, John Hopkins University, the World Economic Forum, and the UN in partnership together, and along with like people from NBC and stuff like that, all got together and basically walked through what are essentially war games. And just like those scenario narratives ended up coming true, and as far as the pandemic, of course, just like those came true and provided the world a toolkit, a template for how to respond in the event, the unlikely event of a worldwide pandemic, and then of course everything that they recommended ends up coming true. So too can we reasonably expect that this scenario narrative will also come true. It's just the way it is. Now, in the interest of time, let's move on to the second bit of information. This has to do with Ontario, my home province. Ontario, Canada, for those of you who are not familiar. Now, they have changed the Employment Standards Act so that basically anybody that refuses to get the vaccine can be laid off without pay. Essentially firing that worker for refusing to get the vaccine. So you don't get the jab, you don't get the job. And where is that? It's under number 4. The employee is under a direction, so at the top, employees can take infectious disease emergency leave if they will not be performing the duties of their position because of any of the following reasons. And under those reasons, under number 4, the employee is under a direction given by their employer in response to the employer's concern that the employee might expose other individuals in the workplace to a designated infectious disease. I wonder which one they're talking about. The ESA does not require employers to pay employees during that time. Examples include where the employer is concerned that employees who have not received the COVID-19 vaccine may expose others in the workplace to COVID-19 and tells them not to come into work until they have been vaccinated. And B, let's see, directed an employee to stay at home for a period of time if the employee has recently traveled internationally and the employer is concerned the employee may expose others to workplace to a designated infectious disease. So there you have it. Under the new Employment Standards Act, an employee can be laid off if they have not been vaccinated without pay. Now, it's somewhat promising that there is an infectious disease emergency leave. Perhaps that comes with funding, perhaps it doesn't. I don't know. Nevertheless, this sets a very dangerous precedent, obviously, because they said that the vaccine wouldn't be mandatory. It's not going to be mandatory, but you only need it to go out in public places, to work, basically to live your life. So this is called coercion. And from what I remember about all that stuff about consent, you know, all that consent in universities and stuff, you have to give consent and whatever, coercion kind of precludes consent. It kind of undermines consent. That's why we don't take coerced confessions, or at least we shouldn't. But coercion is the grounds for exoneration. So we're just going to coerce you as much as physically possible to get this damn vaccine. Now, before I show you what this vaccine is, very quickly, CNN just did a video, an interview, where a person has said that we need to keep restricting people's freedoms. We can't let up on the lockdowns. We have to maintain the restriction of freedoms, because if we don't restrict freedoms, then people essentially have no reason to get the vaccine. So that's just out and out coercion. Now, you've probably seen that clip before, but this is the one that I want to show you. This is what they are coercing you to get. When people say this is an experimental vaccine, it's never been done before, I would like you just to very briefly watch this with me.
And Pfizer are both mRNA vaccines.
Correct.
Has this kind of mRNA vaccine technology ever been injected into humans before?
Well, this is the first time, and the good news is that the results are really, really good.
And so if you could actually change that, which we call the software of life, if you could introduce a line of code or change a line of code, it turns out that has profound implications for everything. So many of us get a vaccine. What is a vaccine? It is an injection in our arm where we get bits and pieces of the virus, the proteins, and that teaches our immune system to recognize the virus, and so when we get infected, we're not sick. Now imagine if instead of giving the protein, we would give the instructions on how to make the protein, how the body can make its own vaccine. That's an mRNA vaccine, and here's what it looks like from the cell. So the traditional approach has protein floating around your cells. An mRNA vaccine approach has the cells themselves in your own body making the vaccine. What's more alarming, a stranger prowling the neighborhood or somebody who just broke into your ground floor and tripped the alarm? That's what happens with an mRNA vaccine. You've tripped the alarm wire, and now the cell is dialing 911. It's calling the police at the same time as it's making the protein and saying, that's the bad guy.